Hi, I'm Pippa, and today we're going to be talking about one of my all-time favorites, The Martian by Andy Weir.
In your face, Neil Armstrong.
Okay, so a quick summary of the novel is basically astronaut Mark Watney goes on a trip to Mars with his crewmates, and then his crewmates think he dies in the storm, and while escaping the storm, they leave Mark behind on Mars.
But I'm still alive. Surprise.
Then Mark spends the rest of the novel basically just trying to survive on Mars, grow food, and get home. The book is told through a series of journal entries that he makes in case he dies on Mars in hopes that somebody will come back and find them. He journals what he did that day, what he plans to do the next day, as well as includes lots of funny thoughts and jokes and fun things like that to keep himself occupied. What's super duper interesting about The Martian, both the book and the movie, is they're both very happy pieces. Like the movie, it's just a feel-good movie to watch, and the book is a happy feel-good movie to read. It's not very stressful, it's joyful, it's funny. It's just an overall very pleasant read, which is odd considering he's left for dead on a desolate planet and almost dies like every single day. I thought about Mark's happiness a lot while reading the book. I thought, why is the author making Mark so happy when he shouldn't be happy? Why is he always cracking jokes? Why is he in a good mood? He's about to die. Why does he think that this horrible situation is funny? And I thought about this for a while. I kind of just sat and I pondered it, and then I kind of just started brainstorming ideas about happiness and like what it takes to be happiness. And eventually I came to the question, like, is happiness relative? I thought maybe that had something to do with it. So I googled, is happiness relative? And I found this article by Ruut van Hooven called Is Happiness Relative? And I'll summarize that article. The article states that happiness results from comparison, the standards of comparison adjust, and the means of comparison are arbitrary constructs. And then these three things imply that happiness does not depend on a person's quality of life, and that changes in living conditions have a short-lived effect on happiness. To simplify that a little more, it means basically, the size of your house, where you live, things like that, they'll only affect your happiness for a short period of time. So for example, if you move to Hawaii, you'll be super happy about it for a short-lived period of time, but then eventually you'll just begin to feel normal, and that won't bring you happiness. So your thought, like the fact that you live in Hawaii will no longer be one of your sources of happiness. And yeah, the author tried to explore a lot of things in The Martian, like loneliness's effects on a person's mental health, and just the human mind and what humans can accomplish, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people talk about these things, but I actually think that Andy Weir's number one priority in the book was to explain that happiness comes from within, and it's not up to your surroundings, materialistic objects, and things like that to fabricate it for you. The author explores this in a few ways, and that is what I'm going to be talking about today. Andy Weir starts off the book by giving Mark the worst quality of life he possibly could. He even takes away ketchup from the poor man who has to eat potatoes every single day for over a year. So, Mark has no belongings. He has no food, no connection with people. He eventually gets to connect with people a few months in. Yes! But at the beginning, he is isolated. He's got nothing that the average person thinks they need in order to be happy. Now, the author didn't have to take away so much. He could have left the poor man ketchup. He could have just given poor Mark something to just have something to make him happy, whether it be his favorite movie, because there were movies and songs on the ship, just none that he liked. The author could have given him something, but he didn't. And I think that the author really did this on purpose to show that you do not need anything, no materialistic objects. You don't need anything except yourself to be happy. One quote from the book that I feel really embodies the point that I'm trying to make is, I started the day with some nothing tea. Nothing tea is easy to make. First get some hot water, then add nothing. Mark looks at nothing tea as a funny joke he can crack in his journal instead of sulking while sipping hot water, which is what the average person probably would have thought to do in that situation. This quote really demonstrates that quality of life does not affect Mark's happiness, and I think the author put this in there to show that it doesn't have to affect yours either. You can be happy with what you already have, even if all you have to enjoy is hot water. In The Martian, Mark takes control of his own happiness by doing fun things that have no connection to the plot. This makes the book longer and more confusing because it keeps jumping from chapters that move the plot forward to seemingly irrelevant journal entries. For example, the crew at NASA are all sitting at their desk pondering, how depressed Mark must be, and how being all alone, thinking everyone's left him for dead, must be affecting his happiness. And then it cuts to Mark just journaling. How come Aquaman can control whales? They're mammals. Makes no sense.
He's 50 million miles away from home. He's totally alone. What the hell is he thinking right now?
I am the greatest botanist on this planet.
This happens a lot, and there are whole chapters of just funny little bits of Mark just writing down random stuff to keep himself occupied, because it's his journal. Are these little journal entries essential to the plot? In literally no way. You could skip all of them, and the book would still probably be a thrilling, entertaining read. They are not important to the plot. However, they are important to the novel. Not only is it a laugh for the reader, but it demonstrates that in the worst situations, we have all that we need to be happy, we have our brains to come up with silly thoughts that we can ponder, and we can create exciting ideas in our minds that we get to explore. Another great example of this situation is when Mark says,
They say that once you grow crops somewhere, you've officially colonized it. So, technically, I colonized Mars. In your face, Neil Armstrong.
Instead of Mark moping about how he has to grow plants on the planet where nothing grows, he rejoices in the fact that he colonized Mars. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. The author included this passage to voice Mark's ability to look on the bright side, colonizing Mars rather than having to grow plants on Mars, and gets the reader to do the same. In doing so, the author voices that happiness comes from within. It is up to you to see the glass half full. Anyone can do it, even if you are stranded alone on a planet about to die. As you know, Mark spends the entirety of the novel just trying to survive and get home. That's his only goal every day, is just, will I survive? Will I get closer to getting home? But still, when he gets home, he wants to go back to Mars. It's not explicitly implied that he wants to go back to Mars, but there's a passage in the book that makes it clear that he definitely still does. And this passage, sadly, wasn't included into the movie, which I think is really sad because it's such a good little passage. But basically, Mark goes out for dinner with his former commander, Lewis, and Lewis tells Mark that she's going to space again and wants Mark on board. Mark looks at Lewis and says, "You're crazy." Lewis then tells Mark, "You go out to your backyard and look at the stars, right? You find Mars in the sky if it's visible, and you just stare at it. You do this every night." Then Mark blinks a couple of times in shock at the accuracy, and Lewis hands Mark her business card. Then Wani narrates, "She's crazy. Well, actually, she's the sanest person I know, and I repeatedly trusted her with my life, but this? Nah." I snorted at the card and shook my head. Somehow, I accidentally brought Lewis's card home with me. You know how it is. Sometimes you get on autopilot when you're leaving a restaurant. Well, I wouldn't have any need for it. I set it on my desk and made a mental note to throw it away later. Then I went back out, and I looked at the stars. This passage drives home the point that even though his quality of life has improved drastically since getting back to Earth, I mean, he's at a restaurant. No way he could go to a restaurant on Mars. He's at a restaurant, his quality of life is so much better, yet he still just has this deep ingrained desire to go back to Mars. Mark was happy on Mars while barely surviving. This passage is in The Martian specifically to tell the reader that Mark was happy on Mars, meaning that you can be happy too, anywhere, anytime, any place, even while stranded on a planet that is trying to kill you. Happiness comes from within, and it is up to you to seek that joy, and you can't rely on your surroundings or materialistic objects that fabricated for you. That iPad that you want, it's not going to make you happy. That sports car, not going to make you happy. It will for a short time, but then eventually that'll just become the new normal. It's not going to make you happy. In conclusion, while The Martian definitely tries to give a lot of messages to the reader, I think the most important one that you can take from it is that your quality of life will not determine your happiness, and that you can be happy where you are with what you have right now. Yeah, that's basically the main point that I took out of the book. I hope that you understand what I'm saying, and I hope that you try reading The Martian, because I think it's a really go away. Anyway, bye, Mr. McDonald. This year was really fun.
In your face, Neil Armstrong.